Hello everyone. Not so long ago, I was at the Nascom event, which was managed by Nascom 10,000 Startups, addressing a bunch of really young and enterprising women entrepreneurs. They all came down in bunch to learn how to get their company started. And most of them had a question, when is the right time for me to start marketing? And ironically, they felt that the time they start marketing is when the product is ready. Well, here I am to bust a few myths about when do you really get your marketing started. I was explaining to them through a very interactive session and got them really engaged with when do you develop an idea, how do you take that idea and validate it, when is the right time to take that idea to market, and how do you scale your business. I'm going to try and summarize some of the points that I highlighted during my session with these young entrepreneurs. Firstly, before you try building a product, validate if there is a need for that product. Now, how do you validate that need? The best way to validate that need is to do your market research. Now, what do we mean by market research? Market research is not just identifying what is the market size, what is the market total opportunity, but also identifying are there any competitors you have in the market? Having a competitor is actually not a bad thing. It shows there is demand for your product. If you do have competitors, then what is the problem they are solving? Where is the gap? Will your product bridge that gap? People today are not just inventing, they're innovating. And the idea of innovation is trying and identifying a gap that already exists in the market, managing that gap with the demand that exists for that particular requirement, and then building a product to substantiate it. That's what market research is all about. Identifying your competitors, identifying the gaps, figuring out whether the product can bridge the gap, identifying the necessity demand, and how your product will help fulfill that demand. Once you've completed your market research, you culminate into something which is called a MRD, a market requirement documentation. The objective of your market requirement documentation is to identify which will be the features that your product should contain. What should be standard? What should be customized? We often feel that you start building the product when you feel there is a need. But the market requirement documentation tells you and validates for you whether there is a need, who the customer is, and what kind of features should your product contain. Once you've done that, in a startup, you don't have too many functions. So the founder is the product manager. The founder is also the engineer, and the founder also plays the role of a marketeer, and sometimes also the salesperson. So after you've written your market requirement documentation, you write your product requirement documentation. What is a PRD? So a product requirement documentation, which is also called as a PRD, is nothing but taking all those data that you collected in your market requirement documentation and creating a roadmap. When do you do what launch? You can't have 30 features at the same time. So, which would be the first 5 features you will launch in your product? That is what is called as a PRD. In the PRD, you also create something called as a product roadmap. You decide when, how, and at what time each feature will get released. Once you have done that, you go into the development stage. Now, what happens in the development stage? That's when you don a hat of an engineer. So you're coding. If it's not a technical product, then you're basically building your service plan together. So you start that process. And I am a big believer, whether it is marketing product, whether it's a SaaS product, whether it's an analytics product, doesn't matter what the product is. But technology should play a role as the key enabler to ensure that the product is scalable and sustainable. So now let's take a step back. So what you do as an engineer, you start coding the product. Does that mean that you stop being in touch with the market? Absolutely not. So once you have designed the product, you have coded the product, your next step is to understand if the product that you built and the first market requirement documentation that you wrote, is there a match? How do you define the match? So you identify few test customers. That process is called as a JDP, a Joint Development Program. So what do you do in a Joint Development Program? You basically start reaching out to few test customers. Now what do you tell them? How do you convince them to try your product? Well, it's very, very easy. The way they will get convinced is they don't have to pay anything for it. You have to tell them, I'm building a product to meet your need. To be able to meet your need, I need you to be a part of the development process. You don't have to pay me anything, but you have to give me feedback. Whether the features that I'm building in the product meets your requirement. And customers often love the idea because they feel included. Once you are in a JDP cycle, you have at least 5 to 10 minimum customers who are a part of the cycle. What happens next? When you are ready to take your product to the market, which is your general availability, you already have built your case studies. Think about how fantastic it is, which means marketing is still already making its role felt in the system. So once you have done your JDP, you have some successful case studies, how do you launch the product? So you launch it using those case studies. Your customers do the launch for you. You don't have to do the launch yourself. Even more exciting. Think about it. Your other potential customers now tend to have more faith in your product because it is their peers who are launching it. So it's easier for you to then take the market and own the market. So how do you take and own the market? Once the launch happens, you start with creating your marketing strategy. So how do you take the marketing strategy forward? Hold on, let's take a step back. Did I create the marketing strategy after the product is launched? Not quite. I created the marketing strategy at the development cycle itself. Creating the joint development program was a part of that strategy. The second strategy is using your customers to launch the product. The third strategy is using that launch pad to get more and more customers. So now you're marketing, you're selling, you're generating revenue. Today people often forget and get carried away with the existing marketing channels. Here is where we come in. As mentors and advisors, our goal is to keep you real. Does every marketing channel work for you? Not quite. And why is that? Let's say you have to reach out to me and I am your end customer. How do you know where I make my buying decision? It's difficult, right? That's where you need technology. The audience discovery part is very important, and it is equally important to understand the behavior of your audiences online. Now hold on, is online really the way to go? Again, a question that needs to be answered. In every case, online necessarily doesn't work. In some cases it shows results, in some cases it doesn't. A lot of entrepreneurs get carried away by thinking social media will be the right strategy for me. Online media will be right strategy for me. Digital will be right strategy for me. Blogs will be right strategy for me. Not necessarily. The first step is to understand who your customer is. Create few personas. Based on those personas, identify which channel they are most active on. So if Shom makes one post a day in LinkedIn, means it may be the right channel to reach out to me, which means I log into LinkedIn once a day. But if I make one post in 5 months, is that the right channel then? No, not quite. So now what we have learned? We have learned that research is important. We have learned product requirement gathering is important. We have learned involving customers at the development cycle is important. We have learned that leveraging customers to do your launch is important. Leveraging customer to acquire new customers is important. And identifying the right channel for marketing to your potential customers is important. That's how simple marketing is. It's all about simplifying and taking different things at different stages and applying it. It's also called the mathematics of marketing. Marketing now no longer remains a fluffy function. It is a function which becomes integral to your product ideation, development, go-to-market and scale. That's all we discussed during my session with those amazing 100+ women entrepreneurs. They found it exciting and interesting and valuable. I hope you did too. If you're looking for more information, do feel free to write to me. I am a mentor at Nascom and I'm there for you. Thank you.